everyone, this is Tafy LaPlanche, and this is How I Create.
Welcome to This Is How We Create, a show that digs deeper into the creative life of contemporary artists of color. Discover what feeds their creativity and how they found or are finding their artistic voice. Through these intimate and candid conversations, you'll gain insights into the lives of creative professionals of color that are hard to find anywhere else.
Hey, welcome back to This Is How We Create. My name is Martine Severin, your host. In a world where art often feels distant and inaccessible, today's guest bridges cultural divides with portraits that speak a universal language. Tafy LaPlanche is an Afro-Latina artist with Haitian and Puerto Rican roots who navigates multiple identities with grace and transforms that experience into paintings that capture the authentic essence of her subjects. In our conversation, Tafy shares the winding path that led her from a Mandarin-only art school in New York to becoming a celebrated portrait artist, working between Savannah and New York City. You'll hear how her early exposure to everything from subway graffiti to Rembrandts shaped her artistic perspective. Back when I was a street style photographer way back in the day, the main thing that I did was go up to random strangers and ask if I could take their photos. In some ways, Tafy's experience is similar because she talks to us about her unique process for finding subjects. And it's never about appearances. Rather, she looks for the energy that someone exudes. We talk about how she creates a safe space for strangers to reveal their authentic selves in the images and the portraits she creates. She also talks about why ensuring her subjects recognizes themselves in her work is non-negotiable. I had such a fun time with Tafy because we not only talk about her experiences with fashion photography, but we also talk about sculpture and even her ongoing work as a flight attendant. All of these things, all of the work that she has done has kind of added a little bit of this and that, but it's added overall to the ingredient of what makes her distinctive portrait style. And so if you are listening to this and you're navigating the somewhat challenges of your journey and finding your creative voice, well, this episode is for you because Tafy's story offers inspiration on embracing your unique path, and we talk about the power of reconnecting with your abandoned passions. Don't we all have them? All right, we're ready. Let's dive into our conversation with portrait artist Tafy LaPlanche. Welcome back to This Is How We Create. My name is Martine Severin, your host. I'm pleased to welcome portrait artist Tafy LaPlanche to the show. Tafy, welcome.
Hi.
Tafy, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you and what you do in your creative life.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Tafy LaPlanche, and I am a portrait artist based in Savannah, Georgia, and New York City. And I create bold and unique portraits for bold and unique people.
That's a wonderful description. Tafy, could you share with us a childhood memory about growing up in New York City and how you may or may not have had any early exposure to art?
Oh, I mean, just living in New York City, just stepping out your front door, you're going to get just busted with art. No matter where you go, it's such a city that there's this energetic pulse that's just pumping through it constantly. And I even remember just walking around my neighborhood and seeing sidewalk chalk drawings to then going on the train and seeing just buildings filled with graffiti and then stepping off to go to museums and seeing Rembrandts. So I was just exposed to such a range of art that there was no choice as a child but to feel like you wanted to contribute to it and be a part of it all. So I think just having such that exposure, especially at a young age, was just this kind of urge of inspiration to just kind of like just create and be a part of the story.
And from there, how did it influence your interest in art and in painting in general?
I think I just loved how diverse the city was and how you could have so many different people from so many different backgrounds in this melting pot of a city, but then you were still viewed them as like a New Yorker at the end of the day. And that was kind of this just connection that everyone had with each other despite all the differences that kind of came with that. And I think it just really inspired me to get to know people more and where they were coming from, but also understanding that no matter kind of like what your like religious background was or your gender or just kind of how you were raised, that just simply being human and living in the world is something that we can all connect to. And I think it's really inspired me to kind of dive deeper into the stories behind like the works I was seeing, but also wanting to apply that in my own works.
So I read that your mom enrolled you in art school that only taught in Mandarin.
Oh my God.
Can you tell us about that story?
Oh my goodness. So my mom, like I love her to death. And I think she just wanted to give me the world, as any parent typically does, right? And she just tried to put me in an art class that she could afford at the time. And we lived in a predominantly Asian neighborhood. And she had found this art school, I think just like in the newspaper or something. But it just read as like red, yellow, blue art school. So she just saw the word art in it. And she's not tech savvy, so she really didn't know how to like research it except to just physically go to the place and show them my portfolio and be like, my kid does art. Please, teacher. And I remember going and it just couldn't understand what we were saying. And it took me a second to kind of realize like, oh, they don't speak English here. We're in a Chinese neighborhood. I am the only non-Chinese person here. But I remember the teacher like seeing my work and I guess seeing some sort of potential in it and was like, okay. And it was, I don't know, it was interesting because even so I didn't understand what they were saying to me, I feel like art was that universal language. They would prompt me with something, like they literally put something in front of my face to draw and see how I kind of just took that in and then would come and try to physically show me like the right ways to do things or to look at things a little differently. And it really forced me to focus on what I was creating because that was the only way that I could take all the information in. So even so, you know, words weren't really understood between us. I think just the act of creating was something that we both understood and respected.
That's a funny story.
Oh my God, it was so interesting because I'll tell you, I didn't learn a lick of Mandarin. I mean, the only thing that I really learned and kind of kept was ni hao, which was hi, because I was like, I have to respect my elders. And they learned a little bit more English as time went by because my mom was very adamant. So kind of like the main teacher learned like a little bit of English as time went on. And I actually went back like years later to teach for like a month or two, which was like this kid that you couldn't really talk to like comes back in her like older teenage years and is now doing the reverse of what happened to her. But it was, you know, it was the same feeling. It was just kind of like that art being that connection.
So I'm assuming you kept in touch with everyone from that school. That's why you were able to return?
Well, not so much. It was more, they were always in the same location. Well, actually, they did switch. Sorry, they switched locations. And then we ran into the teacher just like in the neighborhood and he recognized me. I have a very recognizable face. I mean, it's this curly hair kid with dimples walking around like a predominantly Asian neighborhood. Like you're going to spot me and you can't really forget me. So he just remembered me. And by this point in time, he has learned a lot more English because he has now taken in more English speaking kids since I have left, which is great. And so he kind of picked up the language over the years and how he was telling me how he has now relocated, but is in the same neighborhood and that I should come by. see the school. And then from there, we kind of had this conversation of like maybe me coming back to like teach a couple of classes and whatnot. And so it was just a chance meeting, in all honesty. But it was so nice to kind of see how his art school has grown by opening up and allowing different kids to come in.
Oh, the things that happen in our lives, right? They always seem kind of that they happen by chance. And I guess they do happen by chance, but they certainly have a lasting influence in our lives.
Oh, for sure. I definitely think the universe just kind of pushes what you kind of attract to yourself at that point. Like it's something that you can forget like years ago, but it's always still a part of you. And there's that thread that just is slowly being pulled. And I feel like that was one of those threads that like, you know, was loose for a while. And then I just happened to be in that neighborhood and just got pulled a little tighter and just this reconnection that I think needed to happen.
Well, you would then go on to study in school. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. My mom definitely was like, stick with this. And for me, it was when I was at that school, because we had started with, it's kind of like the basics of art where you kind of start with, you know, like your shapes and then you go into cartoons and then still life. And then from there, you kind of go to whichever direction that you're interested in. And for the longest time, they had me doing landscapes, which to be honest with you, I completely hated. I don't know why I was doing landscapes. I think I just wanted something different. And I thought that landscapes were going to introduce me to more color, I guess. But that's kind of what I was looking at when I was in school. Because from there, I went to an art-focused high school, which was basically like the movie Fame. It actually was the same school that was in the movie Fame. And it was kind of like the same building blocks that I had from the Mandarin school. So it was, you know, you do all your basics and then you're in either landscapes or I guess abstract or portraiture or whatever at that kind of point. So I was mainly doing landscapes, but I was doodling portraits on the side. So my little like drawing in class on like the margins of the notebooks and things like that would be of the random people in my classroom or of the teachers. They were always of people that I saw. I was never one much for the people in my head. I always loved kind of getting different facial features from people that I like physically saw. But art was just always the forefront of my mind. So it was like I had that art school, and I went to like art high school, and then I went to art college. And when I went to art college, I was given the opportunity to do like a pre-college program before actually deciding like what college I wanted to go to and whatnot. But I definitely applied to just art school, which as I understood my parents' concern with that, they were like, oh, so you're only applying to art colleges and nothing else? They were like, this is the only major? And I was like, I'm going to be an artist. Ha ha ha. Look at me now, parents. Still
Oh, gosh, that's such a great story because it does exhibit the fact that you do have a singular focus, right? This is what you've wanted to do and you're doing it now. I mean, you're doing other things as well, but you are an artist. Well, I guess at this point, what I want to talk to you about is how you came to develop your voice as an artist. Your work, your portrait work is so magnetic. It feels like when I look at any one of your portraits, it's of someone that I know. Can you talk to me first about how you came to find your voice and then how you imbue personality and connection in your work?
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's a little bit of a backstory to the story with that one, because I feel like I had found my voice early on, but then kind of lost it and forgot about it. And it took me like 10 years to kind of get back with it. But essentially, once I had discovered that landscapes were not my thing and really honed in on focusing on portraiture, I actually got nervous about it because I was like, oh, what if I'm not good at capturing the portraits that I want to capture? Like I had the reason why and kind of what I wanted to do. I just didn't know if I was capable of doing it. So I kind of avoided doing portrait work as far as drawings and paintings went, and I actually turned to photography. And I was doing photojournalism and this kind of street photography for a while because it kind of brought me back to that kind of like feeling of when I was in New York and kind of seeing all the different faces pass by. I thought it was cool to kind of just snap strangers as they, kind of was just walking around in their daily lives. And then when I was in my first semester of college, I had taken on a photography major. And I was being told that, the only way that you could make it as a photographer, especially in New York, is if you go into fashion photography. So I was thinking in a business kind of aspect of it. It's like, all right, like once I get out of college, like how can I pay my bills? And kind of just started doing all these internships with fashion magazines in New York and got into fashion photography. And I just quickly lost my passion with it because I would help take these photographs and then see them completely edited to the point where the person I took the photograph was no longer the person in the photo, just because of just beauty standards back then. And even now, to be honest. But I don't know, I felt like the reason of me showcasing people was to showcase them as their authentic selves, no matter what the world thought of them. And really getting to know them. And I just felt like with that experience, all of that was taken away. And then I kind of got thrown out into the real world. And I kind of just forgot that why for myself and really took a step away from photography, but also just took a whole step away from art as a whole. And next thing I knew, like 10 years had passed. And then it was really until COVID hit that I rediscovered my passion for it because I remember I was sitting like in my living room and I was like, all right, I don't want to make a fifth sourdough. Like, what's a new skill or an old skill that I really love that I can now completely have my focus on? And I remembered how much I loved to paint. And I really kind of sat with myself and I was like, wow, why did I ever stop painting? And I was like, well, you know what? I have all the time in the world right now. So might as well get back into it without really having the judgments of everyone around me except for myself. And I think too, just having that time pass, you're a little bit more sure of like who you are and like why you want to do things. Age is a wonderful thing. I recommend. People are like, never grow old. No, definitely grow old. You learn things with it. You learn things about yourself. And it was something that I was really passionate about was how people perceived me just based on my cultural background, because I'm both Puerto Rican and Haitian. And it was always, I had to be one or the other, or I wasn't enough of one or the other. Yeah, I'm this whole person, despite that, but still connected to it. And so it kind of drove this passion of finding other people with Caribbean backgrounds and how they kind of connected to their culture. And just made this portrait series just based on simply that, just something that I was passionate about, something that I wanted to talk more about, but not only for like other people, but mainly for myself. And I think just creating that forced portrait after so many years felt right. It was like, oh, this was what I was supposed to be doing this entire time. And I think just after doing that first portrait, I just never stopped. And I think just kind of refocusing on the reason why I wanted to do it and just really connecting and really trying to not only create this portrait just to be visually appealing to audiences, but to also tell a story not only about the person, but revealing something about somebody else who might be viewing that portrait as well. I just think overall, it was just really focusing on the reason why I wanted to do it and going for it. And I think that's why it shows so much through my artwork, because it just comes from a very genuine place.
That is quite a journey that you went on.
Yeah, it's always, people are like, oh, what do you think that you would have been somewhere else if you had continued instead of having that 10-year break? But I think that having that break really allowed me to understand what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. And it was necessary for my journey.
Well, can you tell me how you're having done work in fashion photography, how that influences the way you paint?
I think it definitely influences the composition of things. I think when I was doing photography, you had to be very conscious of where the person was placed within the image to make it visually compelling and to kind of draw people in. I always find it interesting when you kind of like dabble in other like art genres that isn't particularly like known to you because it always brings this kind of unknown knowledge to your work. And it's something that's just always going to run in the background without you really realizing it. But I think composition was definitely one of those things that kind of carried into my work. I also believe just like the color story of things. And again, just kind of what was visually compelling to draw you into the image. Because a lot of times with fashion photography, you're kind of just flipping through a magazine and you want something that's going to make that person stop and look at it, right? And then from there, it comes more into, all right, now they're looking at the image. Now they can see all the clothes that's on the model. Maybe they want the clothes. Maybe they want to be that person. And I think just that attention grabbingness, just what an image can provide, was something that I was able to carry on into my works as a painter. And I had done sculpture like a long time ago. And this was like a very short-lived art dabbling, because I will say 3D art is not my forte, but I admire it a lot. And just learning how things are supposed to be built upon and formatted. And I was doing a lot of like figure sculptures, helped me with my portrait work, because if I was drawing something and I knew something was misplaced, I kind of knew from sculpture like where an eye socket muscle was supposed to be, and all just the foundations of muscles and bones on the face, because that's what I would sculpt before sculpting like the skin on a thing. And it kind of helped me realize where I can see my mistakes when I drew portraits and figures, because that background is now kind of just embedded into my brain. So I'm like sculpting while I'm painting. I'm also photographing while I'm like painting. It's interesting how it all just kind of combines because it's just a part of you now.
Mm, gosh, and then sculpting is its own form because you are moving from 2D to a fully dimensional art. And so I'm assuming that it all informs each other, because when I look at your work, there is such dimension to it. I'm assuming, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that sculpting just also inform your practice too, because the way that you create dimension in your paintings might be influenced by sculpting.
Oh, 100%. Because you're right. With having a 3D image, you can physically see where your lights and shadows are hitting, because you know the depth of it, because your hands is what created it. And I think that it definitely carried over with my painting, because now in my brain, I know that right between your eyes and your nose, it's going to be a little bit darker, because that's like a little bit more depth, because I remember like sculpting that part out in a face, and little things like highlights in the tops of the lips and like the very like bottom of your nose and things like that. And that's just because I remember physically making that with my hand and building it, so that when I'm painting a 2D surface, I still apply that practice to it.
Funny enough, I find that for the podcast, because we do video this season, when I have to do my makeup to be video ready, that I have those things in mind from Photoshop.
Yeah.
And when you're editing a subject, you have to then dodge and burn and just add those shadows and add highlights just to make sure that you're creating dimension and interest in an image.
Yeah, it's all something that I think anything that you do in life, even if you kind of ignore it, it's always just going to be a part of you. And it's kind of this discography that your person kind of holds. And whenever you're ready to use it, and I kind of think of it like the Matrix, when like Neo, like watching all those different videos to learn different skills, and then it's already like a part of him. So when he needs it, it just kind of comes out. I feel like that's just how it works in the art world as well.
Well, I read, Tafy, that one of your dream projects is to do a mural.
Oh my God, it is. Yeah.
Can you tell us about why you would want to do a mural?
I just feel like my work needs to be on a bigger canvas. I mean, I recently did these works that were like 5 by 6 feet, and that still wasn't big enough for me. It's interesting. I mean, I'm very detail oriented. So when I work on a small space, I'm very like up close and personal with it. And I feel having a larger space to work with allows me to be a little bit more free. And I love kind of what happens when I break out of my very focused state of mind when creating art. I mean, I have like mock-ups of mock-ups when it comes to my work, because I'm very, very meticulous. So I like having that freedom to kind of see what happens. But I also love the concept of art being accessible at the end of the day. And I think that's the main reason why I would love to do a mural. I would just love to have one or multiple of my works be something accessible to anybody, but also be something that's a part of a community.
One of my dreams is to create a mural in my house. And currently, we know that where we're living, we're not necessarily going to be there forever. But I know that the next space, I definitely want something really big. For some reason, maybe it is because of growing up in Haiti and having art and color everywhere. It seems that the US, everything's so much duller. The houses aren't as vibrant. You don't see color as much.
My house is the only house on the block that has colors. I mean, we have yellow and orange shutters and a door, and there's just a multitude of flowers, like all in the front yard. And it's an HOA neighborhood. So for the most part, all the houses look the same, but everything is just beige and black. And we're over here just like, hello. But yeah, it's one of those things where it reminds you of home.
Mm-hmm. Tafy, I read that you were a flight attendant in order to fuel your artwork. Are you still a flight attendant? Are you still traveling?
Yeah, I'm still a flight attendant. It will be 10 years next month. So been in it for a decade. But the main reason why I started being a flight attendant, this is back when I was still doing photojournalism, was I was trying to find a way that I could access multiple locations in a shorter amount of time, but be able to have my flight and stay provided for me. So just kind of in a smart kind of way to kind of make that happen for myself, because I was freelancing. I was like, oh, well, if I become a flight attendant, then I can just be able to get to these locations and while I'm on my layover, see what jobs are open and be able to like do that as a whole. Because this was really shortly after I had dropped the whole fashion photography and I was kind of getting back semi into kind of what I was into. And I realized really quickly that carrying all the stuff that I needed on my layovers plus my camera equipment was heavy. So it's really, really heavy. And everything with being a flight attendant, it just comes with seniority. So you're not going to get the trips that you think you're going to get like the first couple of months of it or the first couple of years of it. So that actually kind of helped me get back into my drawing, because I was like, well, a camera's heavy, but a pencil and pen aren't, because I didn't want an excuse to not capture the people that I wanted to capture as I traveled. And I think kind of having that photography background, especially within photojournalism, you were always prompted to discover the story. So I was always talking to people and always kind of figuring out where they kind of came from and just what they were about, but also creating this safe space for it all at the end of the day. And I think once I had came back from COVID and knew that I wanted to paint, it was just an easy answer to kind of continue that, because that was still what I was going for. It was just in a new medium. And I think it was also something good for me because it prompted me to kind of get all that material on my own and really know the people who are behind it. Even if I'm only meeting them for like an hour, I just had this fascination of these conversations with strangers that kind of stick with you throughout life. And you may never like run into that person again, but it was just something that they had said that really resonated with you and may even change your outlook on certain things. And I just love that. And I love kind of meeting all different people. And I'll tell you too, like half of the people that I ask to do portraits of will either say no or we just can't reconnect after that moment. But it still drives me to find new people because it's just this kind of like human connection that I'm having with different people and their different stories. But I just love that concept.
How do you identify who would make a good subject?
It's honestly just a vibe. It's just something that I feel in the moment where I'm somewhere. It's rarely ever based on how somebody looks. It's more based off of the energy that they give off. And I mean, I remember I had one, and I will probably never paint this person again unless I run into them. But I was in a underground fado bar in Portugal. And we were there to like eat a bunch, drink a lot of wine, and listen to music. And there was this one girl who was a waitress there who kept like singing along very quietly in the corner and like not wanting anyone to kind of recognize her. And I kind of approached her after and kind of asked her, I was just like, oh, like, how long have you been working here? Like, is it your dream to kind of like sing one day and all this kind of stuff? And it's just kind of just taking a moment to kind of notice everybody in the room, even if they're not the main focus, and kind of just seeing what they're about and if they're willing to have a conversation. I don't know. It's just, you just get a feeling. It's just instincts that kind of tell me like, ooh, this person has something to say, and kind of just approaching them and seeing if they're willing to have a further in-depth conversation.
And what happens after that? Do you invite them to a studio? Do you take a photo of them or several photos? I'd love to know what the process is from meeting them.
Well, it's always different because not everybody is super extroverted or has the time. So I always just present them with the want to do a portrait of them and to have a further conversation from the one that we just had, and if they're open to it. And I just leave them my information. I tell them how they can contact me, if there's a way that I can contact them, and I let it sit with them for a little bit because I don't want to just like jump on them unless they're like, if they're super excited about it, then I'll kind of get all the stuff that I need. But I always kind of just leave them with an exchange of information and then kind of reach back out and go from there. If they're super excited about it, and if it's something or a place that I'm able to go to constantly, then I'll go ahead and do like a couple of sketches of them. Or if it's something where I don't have time to do the sketches because I'm only really ever in a place for less than 24 hours, I'll take a couple of pictures, or I'll have them send me photos where they feel their most confident selves in. So it's a range of things. I've done sketches over video chat sometimes. Personally, I love when someone comes in to my studio and we can have like a conversation and I can sketch them as they're just talking, because I feel like I can get more of their genuine selves through that. And then I'll kind of create like a mock-up of what I'm thinking. And I always share it with them because even so, it's my painting, I still want it to reflect who they are. And if they don't see themselves in the works, then I go back to square one. Like I never go from a sketch to a painting until the actual, I guess, muse at that point sees themselves in it to some degree.
How long does that process take?
It depends. I want to say the whole conversation and sketch will take a bit because sometimes it does take a while for people to get back to me, or people are just in a different state in their life from when we had originally talked, and we have to adjust a few things to kind of reflect that. I want to say anywhere from like a couple of weeks to maybe 2 months at most. And then once I have the final sketch of what I'm going to do, and that changes as I paint, that will kind of go fairly quickly. That will usually take me a month to do because I've done so much setup beforehand that by the time I get to the actual painting, I have a very kind of clear path of the direction that I want to go in. And then just depending on like colors and things like that will kind of change as I go, just to see, how to work. The work kind of will speak to me at a certain point and be like, all right, we need to change direction. But there's just so much that goes into just the drawing that goes on the canvas before the actual painting.
That does sound like a long process. And are you usually working on more than one piece at a time because of how long it takes?
No, I've tried that. And I've realized that when I work on multiple things, nothing gets done. It just ends up being a lot of like halfway works in progress versus when I just kind of focus on something and just see it from start to end. And I just think that I can give my full energy and like all that I have to one piece versus splitting my focus. I just realized that when I've done that, I haven't given my all to any of it. And it just kind of ends up being like things that I'll eventually kind of get back to. But when I focus kind of just purely on one thing at a time, then I see myself really like tuning in on it and focusing and giving the best that I can with it.
That makes so much sense. It's hard these days to really just stay focused because there's so much coming in from so many different places, And I find that when I am able to focus, it just means that you can go deeper into the work.
Yeah, you definitely just have to kind of find, I guess, your flow, as people kind of call it, and just zone in and then go for it. And, I'm not saying that working on multiple pieces doesn't work. Different people work great doing that. But I know at this point for myself, it always causes a distraction.
So, Tafy, as we wrap up, the question that I have for you is about if you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, say your younger self after you graduated art high school, what advice would you give that young Tafy?
Oh my gosh, honestly, I feel like young Tafy can give me more advice than older Tafy can give her. She was a very focused child. But I would just tell her to just keep going. Just kind of ignore the outside noise. You kind of know what's in your heart and you have everything you need within yourself and just believe in you. Yeah. And then young
that's
Tafy
beautiful.
Slap me in the face and say, get to it, do the thing, be more focused.
Oh gosh. Well, Tafy, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for telling us and talking with us about how you create.
Thank you. And it was blessed.
Hi there. I have a quick favor to ask you before you go. If you're loving the show, would you mind taking a quick second to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite go-to podcast app? Here's the thing. Those reviews are like magic fairy dust. They help other creatives of color discover our show and tap into their own artistic superpowers. While you're at it, why not subscribe to our Substack newsletter, Creative Matters? Creative Matters is like a weekly dose of inspiration delivered straight to your inbox. You can find the link to subscribe in the show notes. All right, that's all that I have for you today. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Bye.